The Galactic Council was formed to maintain order, to ensure that peace and cooperation reigned among the stars. Its decrees were final, its decisions absolute. Yet for all its grandeur, its methods were steeped in cold, bureaucratic indifference. The representatives, each one from a different star system, stood as the supreme voice of galactic authority, watching over the myriad races that populated the cosmos. Their presence loomed over every interstellar negotiation, their power unquestioned. The galaxy bent to their will, or so it was believed. It was into this assembly that Earth sent its envoy, a woman not born of royalty or power, but humanity's will. Her name was Dr. Sarah Rhodes, a former scientist turned diplomat. She was not the typical face one might expect to see at such a prestigious gathering. There were no gleaming armor or aristocratic robes. Instead, she wore the simple, practical attire of someone who had seen the harsher realities of space. The universe had been cruel to humanity in its early years, but humanity had endured, and so too would Sarah. Sarah sat quietly at the table of the council, flanked by the representatives of dozens of alien species. The voices around her droned on in languages she had learned over years of study, each delegate expressing concerns over economic matters, scientific cooperation, and the threats posed by rising powers. Yet for all the diplomatic niceties, there was an undercurrent of tension, an unspoken disdain for humanity that she could feel in the cold gazes of the aliens. Humanity had come a long way in the galactic community. Once seen as a primitive species, Earth had clawed its way into the interstellar fold, proving time and again that it had the intelligence, the tenacity, and the courage to stand on equal footing with the most advanced civilizations. However, there were still whispers, still those who doubted whether humanity could be trusted with real power, whether they could handle the responsibilities that came with being a member of the Galactic Council. The very idea that Earth could join their ranks was met with resistance. But Sarah had never been one to back down from a challenge. When it was her turn to speak, she stood tall, her voice steady and clear as she addressed the assembly. "Honored delegates," she began, her words resonating throughout the chamber. "We, the people of Earth, stand before you today not to demand a place among you, but to ask for a chance to prove that humanity can contribute to this great union, to this galaxy-wide peace that you all cherish." Her gaze swept across the room, meeting the eyes of the delegates, each one calculating, assessing her words and the very presence of her species. Some faces softened, others remained stone-faced, and a few even looked away, as though the very idea of humanity's inclusion offended them. But Sarah did not flinch. She spoke with the conviction of one who understood her people's worth, no, their need to be heard. "We are not perfect," she continued. "We have made mistakes, and we have learned from them. We have fought among ourselves, but we have also risen to overcome our darkest days. It is because of these trials, these tribulations, that we now stand ready to join you, not as subjects or inferiors, but as partners. We come to you not with empty promises, but with solutions, with ideas, with a willingness to share what we have learned." The chamber grew silent, the weight of her words settling in. In that moment, it was not just a diplomat speaking, but a representative of every human who had ever struggled, fought, loved, and dreamed. Sarah's proposal was simple: cooperation, the exchange of knowledge, the development of new technologies that could benefit all races, not just humanity. It was an offer of peace, a vision of mutual progress. But as the final words left her lips, she could feel the shift in the room. Some delegates shifted in their seats, uneasy, their minds already made up. The silence that followed was deafening. And then, as if to confirm her worst fears, the High Chancellor of the Council stood and spoke. "Humanity's offer is appreciated, but ultimately inconsequential," the Chancellor said, his voice cold, his tone dismissive. "The Council has decided that Earth is not yet ready for the responsibilities of full membership. You are a species too volatile, too unpredictable. The risks of allowing you into our fold are far too great." The word stung, sharper than any weapon. Sarah's heart sank, but her resolve only hardened. She had known this could happen. She had known that many of the council members saw Earth as a threat, a species too young, too unruly to be trusted. But it didn't matter. She would not back down. She would fight for humanity's place among the stars, for the people of Earth, who had always fought against the odds. But as the words of the Chancellor reverberated in her ears, Sarah's mind raced. There had to be more to this decision, something deeper than mere politics. She had seen the fear in their eyes, the suspicion. Humanity's strength, its unyielding will, was a threat to those who wished to control the galaxy. It was not Earth's potential that scared them, but what that potential could mean for the power structures that had existed for eons. In the moments that followed, Sarah knew that the Council would not listen to reason. The wheels of galactic politics had already turned against them, but she wasn't ready to give up. Not yet, not while there was still hope. Humanity had survived against impossible odds before, and it would do so again, with a quiet determination. Sarah sat back in her chair, her mind already formulating the next steps. The road ahead would be long and treacherous, but humanity would prove its worth, if not to the Council, then to the entire galaxy. She would return to Earth and rally her people, and together, they would show the stars what humans were capable of. The Council might have dismissed her today, but they had no idea what they had just unleashed. The gavel fell, its sharp echo reverberating through the chamber, signaling the finality of the Council's decision. The High Chancellor's cold, indifferent voice declared, "The verdict is final. Earth's application for full membership in the Galactic Council is denied. Humanity's presence remains a temporary status under limited observation." The word stung like a slap across the face, but there was more to come. The assembly erupted into muted whispers. Some delegates exchanged uncomfortable glances, while others appeared unmoved. Sarah stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She had anticipated rejection, but the bitterness of it, the casual disdain with which they dismissed her people, struck her harder than she could have prepared for. They weren't even pretending to care. This wasn't diplomacy, it was an execution, and humanity was condemned. Sarah's hand clenched into a fist at her side. She had been naive to think the Council would ever accept them on equal terms. To the Council, Earth was a nuisance at best, a dangerous anomaly at worst, a species that had been lucky enough to survive long enough to get noticed, but one that still lacked the sophistication and composure of the other galactic races. It wasn't her people's intellect that they feared, but their volatility, their potential for unpredictable actions, for making choices outside the logic of the Council's stifling bureaucracy. Humanity, with all its imperfections, was a threat simply because it refused to be controlled. And yet, Sarah hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected them to kill hope in such a cold, calculated manner. The Council had always been a political machine, but it wasn't politics. This was something far darker. The High Chancellor's final words were a dismissal of everything she had fought for, everything humanity had fought for. No explanation, no understanding, just finality. Execution will commence immediately, the High Chancellor said, his voice now tinged with an air of finality that sent a chill down Sarah's spine. The shock hit her like a freight train. Execution. The word swirled in her mind, as though she hadn't quite understood it. But she didn't need to ask for clarification. She had seen the process before. She had read about the Council's handling of failed envoys, swift, merciless, and devoid of any empathy. The delegates were already gathering their things, indifferent to her fate as they prepared to leave the chamber. To them, she was already a nonentity, a footnote in the records of galactic diplomacy. The High Chancellor, sensing no further use for her, motioned to the security detail. 2 armed guards approached Sarah, their faces emotionless beneath their helmets. It was as though the Council had decided that humans were no longer worth engaging with as equals, but were now subjects to be disposed of in the most efficient manner possible. There was no struggle, there was no second chance. Her heart raced as they approached her. She had no idea what awaited her. She had been in situations before where the odds seemed insurmountable, but it was different. This wasn't a negotiation. This wasn't even about diplomacy anymore. This was about stripping away her humanity, reducing her to an execution statistic, an anonymous victim of a cosmic power play. But in that moment, she remembered something that had always been at the core of humanity's strength, her strength, the strength that had carried them through wars, through extinction events, through challenges no other species could understand. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was something else. It was defiance. As the guards reached for her, she stood her ground. The terror in her chest fought against her sense of duty, but she silenced it. She was no longer just a diplomat. She was an embodiment of every human who had ever been told they couldn't do something, only to prove the universe wrong. She was a symbol of the unbreakable spirit of her people. "Do what you will," she said, her voice steady, her eyes unwavering. "You will regret this. You will regret underestimating humanity." The guards hesitated, briefly taken aback by her defiant words. For a split second, Sarah saw a flicker of doubt in their mechanical eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it came. One of them pressed a button on his wrist, sending a shock wave through her body. She staggered for a moment, feeling the electric pulse run through her veins, but it wasn't enough to knock her down. The second guard lunged forward, aiming to restrain her, but as his hands wrapped around her arms, she pushed back. The strength of her resolve, the weight of everything humanity had endured, surged through her. She didn't fight back with violence, but with a clarity that no weapon could match. It wasn't just a fight now. It was a fight of every human who had ever been told they were too small, too insignificant, too flawed to stand with the stars. Her body trembled from the shock, but she managed to look the guard in the eye. "You're making a mistake," she whispered. "This is not the end." The guards tightened their grip, dragging her out of the room, but Sarah's words echoed in her mind. She knew what this was now. This wasn't just an execution. It was a declaration of war, an open challenge to humanity's very existence. The Council had thought they could break her, break humanity. They were wrong. Humanity was not so easily crushed. As they dragged her through the corridors, her mind raced. There had to be something she could do. She had no illusions about her fate, but she couldn't allow this moment to be the last time humanity would be seen as anything less than equal. The Council had made their move. Now it was time for Earth to make theirs. They had underestimated humanity once. They would not do so again. With every step they took toward her execution, Sarah's mind burned with the knowledge that this was not the end. The spark of defiance she had ignited would grow, and it would spread. The universe would soon learn that when humanity was pushed, it didn't break. It burned brighter, and it would not be extinguished so easily. The news of Sarah Rhodes' execution spread through Earth like wildfire. The broadcast was instantaneous, and the shock waves were felt in every corner of the planet. It didn't matter where you were. The news was everywhere. In the cities, the countryside, in the bustling metropolises, and in the quiet, forgotten corners of the Earth, people stopped what they were doing to watch. The world had just witnessed the brutal execution of its representative in the Galactic Council. And Earth, humanity, was irrevocably changed. It didn't matter that the broadcast had been censored by the Council, that it had been intended to be a quiet, final blow to human pride. The footage had been leaked. The chilling image of Sarah, defiant even in her final moments, her voice unwavering as the guards approached, had been transmitted across every screen on Earth. The death of a single individual, no matter how noble, was not the end of this story. It was a catalyst, a rallying cry for all of humanity. The first to react were the politicians. Global leaders, who had been passive observers of the Galactic Council's actions, now found themselves in a difficult position. The loss of Sarah Rhodes was not just a diplomatic failure. It was a direct attack on Earth's sovereignty. It was a message that no one on Earth could ignore, and they knew it. The response was swift but fractured. Countries scrambled to form coalitions, to put aside old rivalries and stand united against the forces of the galaxy that had just made a grave mistake. Some offered condolences, but it was clear that their hearts were not in it. Others took a more aggressive stance, vowing that the death of their envoy would not go unpunished. In the halls of the United Nations, heads of state convened. The televised meetings were full of impassioned speeches, finger-pointing and political maneuvering, but one message was constant. Humanity could no longer afford to stand idly by. This wasn't just about one diplomat. It was about the future of Earth. And it was clear that Earth was not going to be passive in the face of such an egregious act. The speech that became the focal point of these gatherings came from a leader known for their pragmatism, President Elena Pierce of the United States. She was not known for being an emotional figure, But in the aftermath of Sarah's death, her words hit harder than any weapon could. She addressed the world, not as a politician, but as a human being who understood the weight of what had just transpired. "We are no longer just citizens of Earth," she said, her voice steady but filled with an underlying rage. "We are humanity, and we have been wronged. The Galactic Council believes that it can wipe away our existence with the stroke of a pen, with a wave of its hand. But they do not understand us. They do not know who we are. We do not back down. We do not bow. We fight." That speech was the spark that ignited the fire of humanity's collective will. It wasn't just governments who responded. The people of Earth responded. It was the scientists, the engineers, the soldiers, the laborers, the ordinary men and women of the world who understood that their future was now in their own hands. The media was flooded with images of Sarah Rhodes, her face plastered across every screen. Some viewed her as a martyr, others as a symbol of humanity's defiance. But to everyone, she became a symbol of something greater than just an individual. She was the embodiment of Earth's spirit. As the weeks passed, the mood on Earth grew darker. The leaders of the nations who had once been hesitant to invest in defense now scrambled to ensure that every resource was focused on preparing for what was to come. Military bases that had been left dormant for years were reactivated. Research labs worked around the clock to upgrade Earth's defense systems, reverse engineering alien technology, repurposing old military blueprints with modern ingenuity. It was clear now that the Galactic Council had drawn a line in the sand, and humanity was preparing to cross it. On the ground, the protests grew louder. People began to mobilize in ways they hadn't before. Volunteers poured into military recruitment centers, eager to fight for a cause that transcended national borders. Earth had always been a divided planet, torn by petty rivalries and ideological struggles. But now, those divisions seemed insignificant. The enemy was not a nation or a people. It was a collective, galactic force that had just declared war on the very idea of human independence. But it wasn't just about military might. It was about human ingenuity, and that was something Earth had in spades. The scientists, the engineers, and the brilliant minds of Earth's many nations began to work together in ways that had never been seen before. The greatest minds from every corner of the globe were now collaborating, putting aside differences of ideology, nationality, and background. They were focused on one singular goal, the defense of Earth. Humanity's greatest asset was always its creativity, its ability to adapt. While the galactic powers might have dismissed humans as volatile, unpredictable, and ultimately inferior, they had failed to account for the human capacity for invention. Earth's military engineers began to design new, more advanced warships, ones that could utilize previously unknown technologies gleaned from the wreckage of battleships, and even from mysterious alien materials once considered beyond human comprehension. The weapons they created were nothing short of revolutionary. They were faster, stronger, and more efficient than anything the galaxy had seen before. Alongside this, there was a creation of a new kind of shield. It wasn't just a defense, it was a weapon in itself, capable of absorbing and redirecting energy attacks. The same ingenuity that had once put humanity's astronauts on the moon was now being used to construct devices that could neutralize enemy weaponry in seconds. Earth was preparing for war, and it wasn't just about responding, it was about hitting back with everything they had. The global response wasn't just about preparing military strength, it was also about survival. Underground bunkers, once relics of the Cold War, were being retrofitted with the latest technology. Cities began to reinforce their infrastructures, setting up their own communication networks that were entirely disconnected from the Council's satellite systems. Earth wasn't just preparing to fight, it was preparing to stand resilient, to ensure that no matter what happened, humanity would endure. Throughout all of this, there was one common thread, a shared belief that they were fighting for something greater than themselves. It wasn't just about revenge for Sarah's death. It was about proving to the universe that Earth would not be silenced, that humanity would not be crushed by the weight of a galaxy that thought itself invincible. They would stand together as one. The question now was not whether Earth would fight, but how? They had lost one envoy, but in her loss, they had gained a unity that no one, least of all the Galactic Council, could have foreseen. And as Earth mobilized, the stars would soon learn that humanity's rage, once ignited, could not be quenched. The day Earth declared Annihilation Protocol, the galaxy held its breath. The message was sent through every available communication channel, a declaration from Earth that reverberated through the cosmos like the clang of a bell marking the beginning of a war. It was simple, direct, and unambiguous. Humanity will not be subjugated. Earth is not to be erased. It was a response that sent shockwaves throughout the Galactic Council. Earth, once a minor player on the galactic stage, had made its intentions clear. The Council, which had believed it could crush humanity with a swift and cold execution of their envoy, now found itself staring down the barrel of an unprecedented conflict. The Council's agents in every corner of the galaxy went silent as the news spread. Earth, a species they had underestimated for so long, was no longer begging for acceptance. Earth had decided to make its own fate, and the first blow had already been struck, the declaration of war. But the Council wasn't without its own power. There was no doubting that the collective might of the galaxy could overwhelm Earth in a conventional war. The advanced fleets, the highly sophisticated weapons, the vast knowledge of species centuries ahead in technology. Earth was outmatched in every conceivable way. Or so the Council thought. What the Council had failed to recognize was that Earth wasn't fighting just for survival. It was fighting for something that could not be measured by weapons or fleets of ships. Earth was fighting for its right to exist on its own terms. The very thing the Galactic Council feared was what made humanity dangerous. Their unpredictability, their relentless will to survive, to evolve, to defy the odds. The first battle was small, an isolated skirmish against a minor outpost on the Outer Rim. The Council, expecting a swift and humiliating defeat for Earth's forces, found itself shocked when a human fleet arrived. The ships, constructed hastily but with the ingenuity that only humanity possessed, were unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. They were smaller, more agile, and faster than anything the Council had in its arsenal. Earth's warships, designed by the best engineers the planet had to offer, were a far cry from the giant, lumbering vessels of the galactic powers. Instead of relying on sheer size and power, Earth's ships focused on adaptability and speed. They could outmaneuver their opponents, appearing as mere blips on enemy sensors before suddenly engaging with devastating precision. The technology they employed, derived from a mix of repurposed alien technology and human innovation, made them a formidable foe. The first strike against a Council outpost came without warning. A fleet of Earth's newest warships, silent and swift, approached the outpost under the cover of an asteroid field. The Council's sensors failed to detect the ships until it was too late. The first shots fired were devastating, tearing through the outpost defenses with brutal efficiency. Within minutes, Earth had crippled one of the Council's most advanced bases, leaving behind only debris and remnants of a failed mission. In the wake of that first victory, a sense of disbelief swept through the Galactic Council. They had written off humanity as a fledgling species, incapable of producing anything capable of challenging their dominance. They had expected to crush Earth's forces in an instant. Instead, they were confronted with the reality that Earth was not only capable of defending itself, it was now a force to be reckoned with. But Earth's response was more than just military might. It was psychological warfare. Every victory, every strike against the Council was broadcast to every corner of Earth. The message was simple. Humanity had struck back. The entire planet rallied behind it. Those who had once been hesitant, unsure about the cost of war, now saw something new in their leaders. Earth wasn't just fighting to survive. It was fighting for its dignity, for its place in the stars. The battles that followed were like nothing the galaxy had seen before. Earth's forces used guerrilla tactics, striking fast, then disappearing into the shadows. The larger, more advanced Council fleets were left in disarray, unable to deal with an opponent that refused to engage on their terms. The Council's overconfidence began to crumble as human tactics and ingenuity, born from centuries of struggle and survival, shocked even the most seasoned generals. But the war was far from one-sided. The Council's resources were vast, and they had allies in many of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. Earth, on the other hand, had a single advantage: unity. The very divisions that had once fractured humanity's resolve, the wars, the economic struggles, the ideological conflicts, had all been forgotten in the face of an existential threat. When Sarah Rhodes died, she had inadvertently sparked something far greater than mere retaliation. She had united the world, and now that unity was being put to the test. The media on Earth continued to be a rallying force, amplifying each victory, each small gain. Humans were not just soldiers. They were engineers, doctors, and teachers, all fighting together. Each victory on the battlefield was met with a surge of patriotism, of pride, that propelled humanity forward. Even as the war stretched on, with its costs rising daily, there was an unshakable belief that Earth's cause was just. This wasn't just about fighting back. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity was capable of greatness, that they were more than just a young, volatile species. In the midst of the chaos, Earth's leaders faced a critical decision: escalation. There were whispers of new, far more dangerous weapons being developed. Weapons that could give humanity an edge in this war. Scientists were working around the clock, reverse engineering the most advanced alien technologies they had captured. The stakes were high, and the choices were few. Humanity was at war for survival, and the question loomed: how far would they go to ensure their future? The answer came in the form of a new weapon, one that could turn the tide of the war. It was a calculated risk, one that could either secure Earth's victory or lead to its complete annihilation. The weapon, codenamed Exodus, was a strategic defense system designed to incapacitate an entire fleet at once. It had the potential to end the war, but its use would have consequences, ones that Earth was not yet ready to face. The decision was made. Earth would not just defend itself. It would strike at the heart of the Council, with a weapon that could change the galaxy forever. As the countdown to its activation began, the galaxy held its breath. The Council had made its move, but humanity had answered with a fury and resolve that could no longer be ignored. This war was not just about survival anymore. It was about proving that Earth belonged in the stars. The Council had underestimated humanity's will to fight, and in doing so, they had made an enemy that would stop at nothing to ensure its place in the galaxy. The fate of humanity had been sealed not by the Council's actions, but by their decision to dismiss them. Now, Earth would show the universe exactly what a species capable of defiance could do. And as the first volley of Exodus launched into the stars, it was clear the war was just beginning.